Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Coffee with Coaches podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, and today I have the pleasure of Darren Kanthal. Darren is an avid mountain biker and snowboarder, loves adventuring outdoors, seeing live music, man after my own heart, and the proud papa of Marvin, a 15-year-old cattle dog mix, which makes me want to hug. I can feel myself putting my arms around this dog, even as I describe him. In his spare time, he helps leaders, individual contributors, and companies show up as the best versions of themselves. Darren, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin.
I want to start with the catalog, but we'll get to that. Let's start with your coaching practice, your coaching business. What got you personally into coaching? And then what prompted you to really begin a coaching business and pursue this professionally?
You know, it's multifaceted, the story. The first thing that's important to note is I was never the best corporate employee. I'm a New Yorker. My opinions are important to me. And earlier in my career, I shared them often without discretion or without even being asked. And because of the way that I behaved and showed up, I wore out my welcome more than once. And it's an important piece of the story because when I got let go from a job, I think it was like 2000 and I don't even remember anymore, 2010, 11, 12, somewhere in that time frame. I think it was 2010 actually. And I literally called my mom crying. I was so upset I got let go from this job. I was 33 years old. And it was the first time that I realized that in all of my stories, I was the only common denominator. Like everything was happening to me. So it was the first time I stopped pointing it at you and my bosses and the company and point at myself. And it was a turning point because from that moment on, I realized that I had to change my behavior in order to succeed, which I did pretty decently, I would say. Until my last corporate gig, which took me from one of my top two bosses of all time to hands down the worst boss I had ever worked for. And all of my old behaviors were coming up. And when I finally realized like, this is not how I want to show up, I started working with a career coach. And my coach said to me, or I said to my coach, I need to figure out how to play nicer in these corporate sandboxes. And her exact words were, maybe you should change the sandbox. And so those words were the starting point to me saying, I'm leaving corporate, I'm going to start my own business. And at first I thought I'd be an HR consultant, which was my background of HR. I did that for a few months and realized that was not what I wanted to do. And then I quickly was like, I'm going to be a coach. I know the career process. You know, I've been in HR a long time. I've worked with a lot of professional development programs. And my unique value proposition is I'm not the guy that played well in the corporate sandbox. And a lot of people don't. Yeah. And so that's something I get to coach people on. And it was really my inability, or maybe I didn't want to, be a corporate guy. So I left.
Yeah, I really like that distinction you just made there at the end, where it's like, you weren't necessarily, it's not that you couldn't, maybe it was that you could, or that there was a natural disposition that made it challenging for you to fit within that particular kind of sandbox. But sometimes it's just, you maybe not realize it in this way. I'm speaking a little bit from personal experience here, but I realized that I didn't want to make the changes to my personality, to my core self, in order to fit in that particular place and succeed and excel in that particular place. I didn't like the trade-offs. And once I realized that it was really, I just didn't like what I was going to have to become in order to succeed there. I was like, well, and again, that your coach just freaking nailing it right off the bat. What if I played in a different sandbox? That's a perfect origin story. It's like, because once you have that question, once you're like, well, what if I change this? What if I shift over here? There's so many cascading follow-up questions that then you get to answer as you go through it. I like the fact that your journey immediately turned into, well, let's start trying things. You didn't come to that question with an answer to start. You came to that question with trying more questions. Let's try this on. Oh, this doesn't quite fit quite right either. Let's jump over here. Let's shift over here. And through that, you basically are on the path to perfecting yourself. You're on that journey to find where you fit well. As you could tell, I get a little inspired by it. And so I really appreciate that fact that I didn't fit in that sandbox. It didn't work. I know all the different ways it doesn't work. And then of course that natural coach instinct, let me now share this.
Yeah. You're hitting many nails on many heads for me. I love the thought of the trade-off, right? Because Could I have sucked it up? Could you have sucked it up? Sure, right? We could have sucked it up. But the expense or the trade-off is happiness, fulfillment, self-worth, all that stuff. The other nail that I want to mention is that one of my core beliefs and something I coach on is values. And I created a values assessment in which one can identify their top values and then comparing them to see which one really is their top value. More times than not, and almost always, when my clients come to me and say, I'm unhappy at work or I'm unhappy in my life, one of their core values is being compromised, if not multiples of them, right? So could I suck it up and stay in the corporation? Yes, at the expense of my core values, which is going to get down to my core. When we focus on what we value as men and women, both personally and professionally, then the other part of my coaching is action-oriented. What actions are we going to take that honor those values? And it becomes this equation, not a matter of what am I sucking up? It becomes a matter of what am I willing or unwilling to do or accept or to take action on? And now I get down my own rabbit hole, which is, we often say, well, I should have done this or I should have done that. And the next question after that to the self is usually, well, what's wrong with me for not doing what I should or shouldn't have done? I try to throw that out as best I can. I say, what are you willing or unwilling to do? The easiest thing to say is if you're overweight and you say, I should lose weight, great. Well, are you willing to work out? No. Well, then you're willing to stay with the status quo. Own that decision.
Yep. That's that's a big one. And in particular with weight too, because it's one of those things where I used to, when I was younger in my earlier 20s, I was a 300 plus pound individual, and I held that for a while. Kind of swelled up. When I was 13, I sprouted up to 6'1", and then I was 225 pounds, and that was obviously that helped with football, but not long-term skeletal integrity. So after I got to a point where I realized exactly that, where I was accepting it as a part of my identity, and I was okay with it, precisely because I wasn't willing to do the things required for change to occur. And again, one of those dawning moments, like the sun coming up over the horizon, I was like, oh, so do I really want to change this about myself? And when the answer came back to me, yes, I do, so many other decisions became possible. I could see them as oh, I could stop doing this. I can cut out soda. I can lay off the vending machine. I can start eating a little healthier. I can start going for walks. And then as my weight comes down, I can start going for runs. I can learn how to run as someone with a bigger body so that I'm protecting my joints. And so I read a book, and then I, go to a gym and I talk to a coach about it. And it's just all these decisions that from that starting point, I couldn't see until I had that one dawning realization. And then just this world of possibility opened up for me.
Action begets action. The starting point is often the hardest. And then just as you described, you take one action and it opens up many different possibilities. And if you're willing to explore them, then all of a sudden the ball is rolling downhill, and it's got inertia and momentum, and it's rolling. And it's harder to stop it than it is to keep going.
Yep. I love it. I have so many different things pinging around in my head, but I feel like we could do this conversation for hours, and possibly everyone would enjoy that. But I want to keep us a little bit on track. And we've obviously talked a lot, sort of around your coaching practice and what it's all about and what you do. So maybe let's get down into the trenches, into the nitty gritty. What's the nature of your coaching practice? Do you do a lot of one-to-one? Do you have group coaching or masterminds? Do you have any courses that you offer? What's the nitty gritty of your coaching practice?
It's interesting because a lot of people ask the question, what do you do? To me, to you, to everybody, right? And we often answer with job title. I'm an executive coach. I'm a career coach. And it's great. It's a title. It's what I do. But really what's at the core of what I'm accomplishing or trying to accomplish. And what I've landed on is that I coach people to help them avoid emotional wildfires. And what that means to me is that we all get triggered and have emotional responses to anything that triggers or requires an emotional response. To me, Kevin and I were talking for the audience before we got on here, and I had shared with him that I had a deep insecurity for a lot of my younger years, and I didn't know it. I thought I was secure, but I really was not. And so a lot of my insecurity would show itself in these emotional wildfires. I would get triggered. Someone would either intentionally or unintentionally attack me, or I would take it as an attack, and then I'd blow up, i.e. an emotional wildfire. After I blew up and my temper would subside, oftentimes I'd have to go back and apologize and look at the charred earth, figuratively, that I left behind me, right?
Yeah.
So all that is to say that all of us in some way, shape, or form have these things. We hear a lot about emotional intelligence. We hear a lot about self-awareness. We hear a lot about meditation and mindfulness practices and the like. To answer your question, I coach all the above. A lot of my work is one-on-one. An equal amount of my work is in a front of the room facilitation group coach capacity. And I also lead a program called Positive Intelligence, which is a structured program that is defined as working with people to help them respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset. And as frustrating as it is for people like me to say, it's just your mindset, I'm not going to say it is, but what I am going to say is that it is not easy to have a positive outlook when what we see around us is negative. And for me is people would always say, like, take a walk before you press send on an email, or send the email to yourself, or all these kinds of tricks. The problem is that I wanted the fight. Mm-hmm. And so walking away was walking away from the fight that I wanted at the time. Uh-huh. So really what it was is I needed to not control, that's not the right word. I need to be more aware of what emotional connection I had to the fight. Positive Intelligence gave me those answers. And the answer is unique to everybody, but it's a whole program. It's structured. It's got very easy to understand words, titles like the judge, which is the voice in our head that judges everything. The counter to that is the sage, which is our inner wisdom and our better self, if you will. So Positive Intelligence is a program that I personally practice. I lead others through it, and it's a core part of my business. And it really aligns itself very strongly to strengthening one's ability of self-awareness.
I love that. And I love the way in which you have the framework set up. And I love the example of the take a walk before you send that email. It's like, yeah, I get it. And I just love the way your voice changed, because you used like, oh, crappy 30,000 foot advice person voice, where it's like, oh, why don't you go do this? Like, you just, because you're like, yeah, I know what I could do, but I'm not interested in just coping. I don't just want to avoid this particular reaction or this wildfire. I want to understand why, and then maybe do something about that. I want to move in a direction that allows me to connect with myself. And again, that awareness. And I love it's really simple once you explain it, but it's not easy, which is where people get tripped up. They think maybe the complex solution will make things a little bit easier. When it comes right down to it, usually it's the simple truths, the simple acceptances of, it's like, oh, there's this thing about myself. I think I want to change it. I wonder what that would look like. And then just let yourself go, take that journey. It will not be easy, but it's there. It's just waiting there for all of us. It's very, very straightforward. And also, I just love the fact that you have the simple approach, and you embrace the simple approach. Again, you don't have to use, $5 words when a nickel will explain everything.
Yeah. I love it. It's the KISS principle, right?
Keep it simple. Keep it super simple.
Yeah. I like that change.
Well, but yeah, before I let you go, and I would love to keep you for so much longer, where can people find out more about you? And also, where do you prefer that they find out more about you? I don't know, a lot of people have preferred social media platforms where they love to connect and exchange. So yeah, where do you want people to be finding you these days?
All right, so there's two places that I love and prefer. The first is LinkedIn. Lucky me, I am literally the only Darren Kanthal on LinkedIn. So there's no way not to find me if you spell my name correctly. And I trust Kevin, it'll be somewhere in the show notes or something, how to spell my name.
Yes.
And then my
Darren
website is
Kanthal with a K.
Kanthal with a K. Yes, sir. And my website is candidcareercoaching.com. And you can reach me there as well.
Perfect. I may have to have you back at some point so we can talk more about Marvin. Maybe we just talk like for 30 minutes about Marvin, but that we'll say that maybe for a part 2. Darren, thank you so much for being here and for sharing a bit about yourself and about your coaching practice and everything you have to offer. I feel like so many coaches, it's all very similar in the core principles, but everyone has their own approach, their own experience that brought them there, and they bring that with them into their coaching. And so I feel like you have an ability to connect with a certain kind of person who's looking for a real particular kind of coaching, who might actively reject other kinds of coaching, but which makes them ideally suited for yours. I just wanted to say that I can feel myself responding very positively towards you. And I feel like a lot of our audience would as well. So thank you for just coming and sharing yourself for a little while.
Thank you, Kevin. This was fun. I appreciate it.
And everybody out there, we'll talk to you soon.